This time of year, my Italian-American friend Gina always posts on her Facebook page that St. Patrick was Italian. His parents were no Roman, no doubt, I reply, but he grew up in England, therefore he was English. He probably crossed the Irish Sea, munching on fish and chips. Those were cannolis, Gina replies. And on we go on Facebook until it becomes irredeemably absurd. Tuesday will be St. Patrick's Day. It is the celebration of the patron saint of Ireland. It is also a time when people celebrate being Irish. He was not originally Irish, though. He was born of Roman parents in England, captured by pirates, sold as a slave in Ireland, escaped slavery, made his way back to England, studied Christianity, and decided to return to Ireland to spread the faith. As he was captured and taken to a foreign land, St. Patrick was, for a time, an involuntary immigrant. There was a slave trade between England and Ireland that lasted for centuries. Surprisingly to us in our time, most of the involuntary immigrants in those days were assumed to be people captured in England and sold into slavery in Ireland. During his time in Ireland, he converted many to the Christian faith and encouraged the abolition of slavery. As an immigrant, Patrick changed the culture of Ireland. I grew up in Savannah, Georgia. It is not common knowledge outside of Savannah, Georgia, that the city sometimes has the nation's largest St. Patrick's Day parade, even bigger than Boston's or New York City's. St. Patrick's Day in Savannah is more significant than Christmas, New Year's Day, or the 4th of July. I still have the green derby that I wore on St. Patrick's Day for years as a child. It isn't true that Savannah is very Irish as much as it is true that Savannah loves an excuse to drink and party. So St. Patrick's Day is our version of Mardi Gras, though much more restrained. St. Patrick's Day is important to those whose ancestors immigrated from Ireland to this country. They needed to feel some degree of pride in themselves because they would not find it from others. Irish immigration, especially during the 1845-1846 potato famine, was the first time in the history that a large group of people were rejected in the United States. There was no place in the United States that welcomed Irish immigrants. Some communities discouraged Irish immigration due to their religious faith, Roman Catholicism. Some rejected them due to their different ways. It seems that many of the states then tried to control Irish immigration or to prevent the Irish from having any voice in their communities. Some of this prejudice against the Irish was due to a fear of Roman Catholicism at that time. No Roman Catholic nation in the world of the middle 19th century had become a stable democracy. The Papal States, where the Pope ruled, were an absolute monarchy. France was somewhat democratic, but it had waffled between a powerful monarchy and a chaotic mob since the French Revolution in 1789. Some in the United States feared that the Irish population would be moved by their faith leaders to undermine American democracy, such as it was in the 1840s. They could not imagine that Irish people would embrace a nation which they would have a voice while still retaining pride in their origins and devotion to their faith. So what does this analysis of the past tell us about our present? Where are we now? There is so much to say that there is not enough time to speak to all of it, but I must share some of the reality that we are dealing with today because it needs to be said. And there is so much that I'm leaving out because we don't have time to tell all the things that are going on. We live in a time when masked men are authorized to arrest and detain anyone without charges who they suspect might be an undocumented person. American citizens who are of Latino heritage, even those born in the United States, have been arrested and held in jail cells without being charged with a crime until they could prove their citizenship status. And the proof was more guilty until proven innocent. American citizens, even those who do not appear to be Latino, have been murdered by government agents, and those agents have not been charged. The United States has created detention centers to hold undocumented persons under unhealthy and unsafe conditions. Some of the people who are undocumented came to this country to escape repressive regimes, some of which the United States supports. Our nation has sent some undocumented persons back to their countries of origin, where they may experience harsh consequences when they return. Our nation has permitted the intimidation of men, women, and children by masked men. Our nation's elected leaders on the national level attempted to push through legislation that have made it difficult for almost half our citizens to vote legally. National leaders have promoted the idea of taking away citizenship from people born in this country whose parents were foreign nationals, birthright citizenship as it's called. They want to remove citizenship from people who have spent their entire lives being United States citizens because their parents were not citizens. This is an idea that has been floated. Who would think about taking away citizenship from people? Why is this happening? Why are some of this country going to extraordinary means to harass undocumented immigrants? Why do some believe that immigrants are criminals, even though the evidence is not profoundly there? The answer may not be something that one hears in the news or publicly spoken. It has to do with demographics. Demographics is related to the structure of populations and the different groups within them. Demographics might study people based upon gender, age, or any other trait or feature. Demographers can make projections of the future based upon the data about different groups of people. How might this relate to the immigration hysteria our nation is currently experiencing? In the early part of the first decade of this century, I read an article about the changing nature of the United States in regard to race and ethnicity. The article pointed out that some populations in the United States were shrinking in numbers and others were growing. Specifically, the article stated that the demographic studies showed that the white population, those Americans of European ancestry, was shrinking. White people were having fewer children than in the past. The same was true of African Americans. However, Hispanic, Latino persons still had larger families, and there was also increased population in that demographic from immigration. The article then went on to project that if those trends continued, the country's non-Latino white numbers in the United States would dwindle to fewer than 50% of the population by the year 2042. In 2042, there would no longer be any ethnic or racial group that would be in the majority. The long hegemony of white people of European descent would end, and the United States would have no clear ethnic or racial majority. White people would no longer be special, but one demographic group among others. I put the newspaper and magazine down and thought, this information is going to make some people crazy. It seemed likely that even then, this was the first 5 years of the 21st century, that many white Americans would be upset that they might not be the majority of the population, the standard by which everyone here lived, that they would no longer be the majority. There would likely be a reaction to this news. Then in 2008, the Census Bureau validated what the article had stated. The demographics in the United States were changing, and by 2042, white people would no longer be the majority in this nation. What was more, the white population would probably continue to shrink in numbers. This led to further hysteria among white people who feared being irrelevant to the new order and could only view this nation in terms of racial dominance. However, this was known in the seats of power. The massive majority of lawmakers in this country then and now are heterosexual white men. Some of them have probably never examined the traditional privilege that goes along with that identity. Some probably have and believe that they are inherently better than others. Some, I suspect, have acknowledged that systems that honor unearned privilege do not fit democratic ideals. The knowledge that demographics were changing was certainly known in national politics in the first decade of the 21st century. During the George W. Bush administration, the White House and the opposition party sought to create a system that provided safety and accountability for temporary immigrants, like agricultural workers from Mexico and Central America. They worked together to craft a plan that would give temporary immigrants identification and the understanding that they would only be in the United States during the growing and harvest seasons. They would have rights and responsibilities. Both the White House and the opposition were content with the legislation and certain that it would provide safety and security for all. The president's own party, W's own party, voted the legislation for guest workers down, citing safety concerns. They fed rhetoric that many immigrants were criminals, though there is little evidence for that conclusion. Immigration is a significant issue, but not one that can be approached very sanely in this country right now. Our national leader has called immigrants vermin. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition, though, tells us that they have inherent worth and dignity. The lesson and example, Jesus of Nazareth, tells us that every person is sacred and calls us to love the stranger, even if we do not share the belief in Jesus as a moral leader. Our own lives, the lives of our family, tell us that all of us are descended from people who immigrated to this country. Even some of us present immigrated to this nation. People come to this land for many reasons. Some come for greater opportunity, others for their faith, safety, hunger, or just to wander through a vast new place. Some may have been brought here against their will. There are many reasons that you and I are here. Our people were immigrants. The religious heritage of most people in the United States gives us guidance for immigration. The readings today tell us to welcome the stranger and not to fear the great, and not to fear, which is the great enemy. We should view immigrants as containing potential to enrich our community. In closing, Mary McAleese, the former president of Ireland, tells us that though the immigrant is present in the new home, there is always the calling of the old. She writes, the immigrant's heart marches to the beat of two quite different drums, one from the old homeland and the other from the new. May we, in our time, welcome the immigrant and value what that person brings. So be it. Blessed be.